At dawn, Deputy Collins knocked on the door of Sam Mitchell's humble homestead, holding a thick manila envelope that felt heavier than gravity. His face was ashen, his voice hesitant as he handed over the papers. "Sam, I hate to be the one to tell you this," he began, "but you're being sued by the HOA." "Sued?" Sam echoed, blinking in disbelief. "For what?" Deputy Collins scrubbed a hand over his neck, eyes fixed on the notice. "They say you painted the American flag on your stable without permission." A laugh bubbled up in Sam's throat. This had to be a prank. He wasn't even part of their association. Clutching the envelope, he stared at the legal summons as if it were written in another language. "They can't do this," he whispered, heart pounding. "There's been some mistake." But there was no mistake. The HOA's emblem sprawled across the header in bold letters. The letters HOA felt like a brand burned into his mind. That morning marked the end of Sam's quiet routine of feeding livestock and watching sunrise over 120 acres. It was the moment his simple life fractured, and Sam resolved he would not back down. He closed the door, folded his shoulders, and prepared for the battle ahead, unaware of just how ruthless the HOA's campaign would become. Sam Mitchell was a 48-year-old widower who returned from 6 years in the U.S. Army to manage the 120-acre homestead his father left him. Each morning began the same way, a mug of black coffee on the front porch as dawn spread over rolling pastures, and each evening closed with the scent of wood smoke from the fire pit flickering under the stars. He raised a small herd of Angus cattle, grew hay to feed them through winter, and took pride in being the kind of neighbor who would drop everything when someone needed help. 2 years earlier, Karen, his closest neighbor, had called him out to the roadside where a young mare lay starving in a ditch. Sam had coaxed her back to the stable, nursed her with hay and water, and over weeks watched her strength return. He named her Aurora. In caring for Aurora, Sam rediscovered a lesson he'd learned in uniform, that sometimes fighting means tending wounds until life can bloom again. Last spring, noticing the peeling paint on his weathered stable, Sam resolved to do something bold. He wanted a tribute not only to Aurora's second chance but to the country he loved. Over 3 weeks, he transformed the entire west face of the stable into a vivid American flag, 7 bright red stripes alternating with crisp white, a blue Canton bright with 50 stars meticulously stenciled. Each day after feeding cattle at sunrise, he'd spend 2 hours painting a few stripes, by afternoon chores he'd added a star or two, and by nightfall he was back out with a small lamp and brush, determined to finish before Memorial Day. Drivers passing the homestead began to honk in appreciation, veterans saluted. A few left small flags tucked in the fence posts. Aurora would whinny in greeting whenever someone pulled off the road to pay respects. The mural quickly became a symbol of quiet patriotism and community resilience, just the kind of tribute Sam had hoped it would be. Unbeknownst to him, however, the striking mural was already drawing the wary eye of the nearby Homeowners Association, whose new aesthetic guidelines would soon set Sam on a collision course he never imagined. Part 3, HOA Confrontation and Initial Threats. Exactly 2 weeks after finishing the mural, Sam noticed a sleek black SUV making slow loops around his gate. Assuming it might be an interested buyer for hay, he paid little mind, until the vehicle returned a second time and parked discreetly behind the trees. A knock came at mid-morning, and when Sam opened the gate, he found 2 impeccably dressed individuals standing on his gravel driveway. "Good morning, sir," greeted the taller man, flipping open a case. "I'm Gerald Bradley, and this is Karen, representing the HOA." Sam's brow furrowed. "I'm not part of any association," he replied. Karen offered a polite, tight-lipped smile and motioned to Bradley's papers. "Your property falls within our newly defined boundary for Hillside Acres," she said. "We adopted a policy last month requiring all structures to comply with our aesthetic standards." Sam pressed his palm to the gatepost. "This is private land. My family's owned it since 1962. He watched Karen glance at Bradley before she unfolded the HOA letter. "A notice was mailed," Bradley said. "Perhaps lost in transit." Sam shook his head. I never received it. Karen's expression faltered as Bradley flipped to the page outlining violations. Your flag mural is unauthorized and must be removed within 30 days, he announced. Sam laughed, offhand but tense. You want me to paint over the American flag? Karen's voice stayed calm. Rules are rules. Bradley leaned forward. Noncompliance will result in fines, and potential liens on your property. He handed over a copy of the aesthetic guidelines stamped with the HOA seal and turned away. Karen lingered a moment, catalog in hand, then nodded once and followed Bradley back toward the SUV. Sam watched them drive off, the papers fluttering in his hand. His peaceful routine was rattled, but he believed they were bluffing. That belief vanished when, 2 months later, Deputy Collins reappeared at his door with a lawsuit and a sheriff's badge glinting in the noon sun. Part 4, Escalation and Vandalism. The lawsuit arrived with an unexpected sting, a $500 fine for the mural, then $1,200, then $3,000 in weekly penalties. Every courier delivery brought another demand to cease and desist, all backed by a stern HOA letterhead. Sam refused to pay. Instead, he enlisted attorney Olivia Grant, a tenacious former prosecutor who assured him the association's claims had no legal basis. But warned that the HOA doesn't care about the law, only about intimidation. True to Olivia's warning, the first smear attack came soon after. Flyers labeling Sam anti-community provocateur appeared in Karen's mailbox and slipped under Sam's own doors. Not long after, someone slashed the tires on his feed truck. He found his mailbox uprooted and tossed into the cattle pasture one morning, and days later discovered his water pump's intake valve smashed beyond repair. Aurora's stall door was gouged with khaki-colored paint spelling "Obey," and a used syringe lay discarded in the straw. Despite the onslaught, Sam stayed focused on the ranch. He patched the pump with scrap parts, replaced the tires at his own expense, and painted over the crude threats with bold white stroke spelling, "Resist," under the mural. Neighbors Karen and Harold Jensen brought casseroles and fresh coffee as they helped rewire the waterline and clear broken glass. Each act of kindness bolstered his resolve. Then, on a chilly April night around 2 a.m., Aurora's terrified whinny shattered the silence. Sam grabbed a flashlight and sprinted to the stable, finding flames licking up the side where the red stripes still shone. He uncoiled the garden hose in the moonlight and fought the blaze, battling smoke and wind until the steel nozzle grew too hot to hold. The fire consumed much of the mural, only charred remnants of stars and stripes remained. Sam stood drenched in sweat and ash, hose limp in his hands, breathing in acrid smoke. The wind-whipped blaze illuminated a dark figure slipping away into the tree-line, and he realized with fury that the HOA's campaign had evolved into outright arson. The stable wall was scorched nearly to splinters, but the mural's message, the flag itself, survived, half visible beneath layers of soot. Dawn found Sam on the porch, shotgun across his lap, watching the smoke curl over his property line. The ranch was under attack, and Sam vowed then he would not be cowed. Part 5, Legal Injunction and Security Measures. Barely a week after the arson, Sam's inbox pinged with a court notice. The HOA had filed an emergency motion seeking an immediate injunction. They argued that the mural inflicted emotional distress on residents and disrupted community harmony. If granted, Sam would be ordered to remove every hint of the flag before the case even went to trial. Olivia Grant sprang into action, demolishing the HOA's emotional distress claims in her filings, but she warned that injunction motions were commonly granted on mere assertion, so urgent was the HOA's desire to neutralize him. Under her advice, Sam began fortifying his homestead. He sold an old ATV and some unused fencing at the county yard sale to raise funds, then installed infrared motion sensor cameras along the stable, the driveway, and near Aurora's stall. He dug in floodlights set to trigger on any movement after dusk. By midday the cameras were live. That afternoon, Sam repatched the burned wall, leaving blackened edges as battle scars, then mixed fresh paint to restore the flag, this time making the stripes a shade bolder, the stars a little crisper. He worked under the watchful gaze of his loyal neighbor Karen, who stood by with a thermos of hot cider. As Sam painted, she recounted stories of local veterans who had wept tears of gratitude at his tribute. "You're their hero, Sam," she said quietly. "Never forget that." When the courts convened the next morning for the injunction hearing, Sam arrived in boots and jeans, flanked by Olivia in her gray business suit. The HOA's counsel, a well-groomed litigator, argued that community standards demanded removal. Olivia countered with legal precedent protecting free speech on private property, and emphasized Sam's right to honor his service. Cameras rolling on local news crews captured every tense moment. Judge Milton Reynolds presided. He listened as Olivia highlighted Sam's veteran status, his private ownership of the land, and absence of any contractual HOA membership. The HOA lawyer stumbled under Olivia's questions. When did Mr. Mitchell sign away his property rights? How does an unelected board gain jurisdiction over inherited land? By lunchtime, the judge recessed to consider. While they waited, Sam reviewed footage from the night of the arson. A shadowy figure had knelt by the stable, but the camera angle obscured their face. The next morning, the injunction was denied. The judge ruled that the HOA had no immediate right to suppress Sam's mural pending full trial. More importantly, he admonished the association for premature overreach and lifted any threat of forced removal, for now. Yet Sam knew his fight was far from over. The cameras remained trained on the homestead, the fresh paint glistened under the sun, and the HOA's next move loomed. He and Olivia prepared for the full court hearing, determined to transform temporary victory into lasting justice. Part 6. Proving title and HOA overreach. With the injunction denied, Olivia advised Sam to gather definitive proof of his property's independence from HOA control. Karen mentioned an old acquaintance, Harold Jensen, who still owned the adjacent parcel subdivided decades ago. Early one crisp morning, Sam drove to Harold's weathered farmhouse at the end of Smoky Creek Road. Harold greeted him on the porch, white beard bristling in the breeze and a mason jar of iced tea in hand. After Sam explained the legal ordeal, Harold disappeared into his study and returned with a rolled-up parchment map dated 1958, and beside it, a 1973 deed addendum. "This here line," he said, tapping a faded boundary on the map, "is your lot. See? The HOA expansion starts half a mile that way." He then pointed to the deed addendum, which explicitly stated that Lot 12B and all lands then owned by Harold's family were exempt from future subdivision covenants and homeowners association regulations. Harold signed an affidavit confirming the document's authenticity and delivered certified copies to Sam. Back at Olivia's office, she pored over the papers, eyes lighting up. "This is exactly what we needed," she said. "With these, we can move to dismiss the entire lawsuit as fraudulent overreach." She prepared a motion to introduce Harold's testimony, the historical map, and the deed addendum as irrefutable evidence that Sam never fell under HOA jurisdiction. As they filed the motion, Sam stood at the window of Olivia's office, staring across the town square. For the first time in weeks, he felt hope surge through him. He would prove in court that the HOA's claims were baseless, that they had spent months harassing him, fining him, and even attempted arson, all to enforce rules they had no right to enforce. The battle lines were drawn. Private property rights and free expression versus bureaucratic overreach and intimidation. Part 7, Courtroom Showdown and AG Investigation. On the morning of the big hearing, the county courthouse was abuzz with local news crews. Sam arrived wearing his best denim shirt and work boots. Olivia Grant carried a binder thick with evidence. In the front row sat Karen and Harold Jensen, joined by half a dozen ranchers and veterans in uniform. Across the aisle, the HOA's president, Evelyn Rhodes, smiled confidently alongside high-powered attorneys. Judge Milton Reynolds took the bench and called the case. Olivia began by presenting the original 1958 map, Harold's sworn affidavit, and the deed addendum. She methodically dismantled each HOA claim, that Sam had agreed to the covenants, that the mural violated any law, and that community aesthetic outweighed private rights. When she paused, the courtroom was silent enough to hear every page turn. Next, Harold took the stand. His voice trembled at first as he recounted the land's history, but grew firm as he testified that the exemption clause had been included expressly to prevent any future homeowners association from laying claim. Under Olivia's direct questioning, the HOA's lawyers had no rejoinder. Even Evelyn Rhodes looked uneasy as the judge reviewed the documents. Finally, Sam spoke. "I painted that flag to honor my service and the sacrifice of every veteran. I never sought to harm my community, only to celebrate it." When he finished, the judge leaned forward, brow furrowed, and issued his decision. The HOA's lawsuit was dismissed in full, and their actions were ruled harassment and overreach. He further issued a protective order forbidding any HOA representative from contacting or intimidating Sam, under penalty of contempt. As the gavel fell, the courtroom erupted. Reporters swarmed Sam for interviews. Karen embraced him with tears in her eyes. But before Sam left, the courthouse doors opened to admit a man in a dark suit wearing a state seal lapel pin. He introduced himself as Special Investigator Daniel Pierce from the Attorney General's office and said, "We're opening a formal inquiry into Hillside Acres HOA's conduct, possible fraud, conspiracy, and civil rights violations." Sam watched him as journalists scribbled notes. The war wasn't over, but now it had escalated to the highest level of state scrutiny. He stepped outside into the bright morning sun, hands still shaking with adrenaline, and allowed himself a small, proud smile. His barn's fresh mural glowed in the distance, and Sam knew this battle, far from silencing him, had only strengthened his resolve to stand for what was right.